Happened to Me, a rare disease and medical challenges podcast. The mission of our podcast is to support you, our listeners, and to create community as you confront the toughest challenges in life. All of us will experience health hardships. The real question is, how do we adapt? That's the focus of It Happened to Me. We help you overcome limitations and live a full and satisfying life. Drawing on their own health challenges, hosts Kathy Gillenhorn and Beth Glassman interview guests who share stories and research to help you succeed in the face of difficult health obstacles. It happened to me. I'm not alone, and neither are you.
Joining us today is Jennifer Burgand. Jennifer, originally from Wisconsin, moved to Atlanta, Georgia after college and was an elementary school teacher and assistant principal until the Big Apple called her name, and she's now a successful channel sales manager in NYC. Jennifer has been a fitness enthusiast since she was a young child. She was in gymnastics and dance from the age of 5, and as she got older, she enjoyed working out at the gym, salsa dancing, spin classes, snowboarding, hiking, wakeboarding, and I forgot to mention her love of high heels. After she moved to New York City in 2011 and began tripping on her toes, and her ankle would suddenly give out during a spin class or while wearing high heels, she was eventually diagnosed with multifocal motor neuropathy, or MMN. Jennifer is going to share her experience with MMN. MMN is a rare disorder characterized by slowly progressive muscle weakness. Welcome, Jennifer, and thank you for being a guest on It Happened to Me. I'm not alone, and neither are you. Jennifer, let's start at the beginning. What is multifocal motor neuropathy, or MMN?
First, I want to say thank you for allowing me to be part of this podcast. It truly means a lot to me, and I know it's going to mean a lot to other people that are struggling with MMN and just other things in their life. But MMN, multifocal motor neuropathy, is a ultra rare autoimmune disease, and it does slowly atrophy your muscles and your ability to do certain things like walking or using your hands.
Oh, got it. Wow. Well, can you share with us your personal experience with MMN? How did your diagnostic journey start, and what happened to you?
Sure, I'd love to share my story. It really took a long time to finally get to what was the root cause of all of this, or my diagnosis, actually. I started, as you mentioned in the story, or as you mentioned in my introduction, I would have my ankle give out and I would catch my toe tripping. And I actually initially also had electric shocks from my hip to my knee. But every time something happened, I always put it as something to do with me being athletic. I was snowboarding and I fell on my rear end a few times. So I thought, okay, I'm getting this shock from falling too many times. I was in a spin class and my ankle gave out, and in my head, it was because the shoe was a half size too big. And when I stood up, it just gave out. So I always had a logical reason. I never thought there was something, quote unquote, wrong with me. And I definitely never thought it was an autoimmune disease. When things started happening, it actually started with the tripping. And then I would get painful cramps in my right calf. And that was the same foot that would catch when I was walking. And then my toes would just shoot out painfully, and I couldn't get them to stop cramping. I went to a pain management doctor who was actually treating me at the time for my lower back. And I just mentioned, what was going on. And he told me I was dehydrated and that I needed to eat a pickle, a banana, and just kind of said, "You're too athletic. You know, you've got to keep hydrated." And I kept telling him, this is not from athleticism. There's something going on. And that continued to happen, the cramping, and there wasn't any true rhyme or reason. I couldn't say, okay, every time I did this, it would cramp.
Right.
Every time I did this would happen. I would be in a yoga class, and I went there to try and loosen up the muscles because I thought, again, it was from being athletic. And I would just put my legs out to stretch, and that calf would cramp up on me. So again, there was no real rhyme or reason how this started. I eventually, in 2017, was with my best friend up in Wisconsin, and I noticed that my toes felt like cotton balls. And, you know, I told her, I'm like, God, my feet feel really funny. So I took off my shoe and my toes they wouldn't move. And I said, oh my gosh, my toes don't move. And we thought nothing of it. I went to a chiropractor the next day because I thought, okay, my lower back has hurt from a car accident in my 20s. It has to be a pinched nerve, no big deal. So I went to the chiropractor, he did some adjustments. And then when I went back home to New York City, I saw a podiatrist. The podiatrist actually put me in a soft cast because she said, well, you have a sprained ankle. She did an MRI and she said, you have a sprained ankle. And I said, but my toes don't move. That doesn't make sense to me. But I listened to her, and finally I said, again, this isn't logical. So I went to another podiatrist, and that podiatrist was the one that said, you need to go to a neurologist. And so I finally went to a neurologist, and the neurologist took a video of me walking, because I was kind of rolling my foot, and I didn't realize that when I was walking until I saw the video. And she sent me to get numerous MRIs of my back, probably my neck. She did a very lengthy EMG, which is where they take needles and they put it into your muscles and your nerves to see how they're working. Very painful and lasted about 2 hours. And so I came back, and her answer to me was, I don't feel comfortable diagnosing you because what I think is going on, I've only read about in textbooks. I need you to see another neurologist. And so this was this is actually a couple of years after my symptoms started. And that took at least 8 months to go see now who's my primary neurologist. I went to him, and he had the EMG, and he told me he was going to have to do another couple tests, which I didn't like because it's needles and scary. And that's when he came back with, you have multifocal motor neuropathy. And it's scary to hear.
Yeah.
Jennifer, I'm listening to this, and I would say that your story is reminiscent of everyone who is diagnosed with a rare disease. I'm trying to keep track of how many doctors you saw. I frankly lost track. How many tests you went through, I've lost track. How long it took you to get this diagnosis. And this diagnostic journey, I think for all our listeners, is something that each of us goes through when we have a disease that's unusual. And the good news is you got to the right person. It sounds like you're now in good hands. And I congratulate you on that and not giving up, sticking to your guns, knowing yourself, knowing your body. And I congratulate you for hanging in there and finding out the cause and not doubting yourself, that you're not crazy. You're not imagining this. This is actually happening to you. So I think this is an important lesson for everyone listening. You know, sometimes as women, we feel, well, it must be me, it must be nerves. And it's put off as something, hysteria, some sort of female hysteria. And we have to trust ourselves and our knowing ourselves to pursue the truth.
Couldn't agree with you more.
Absolutely. Now, I have a question for you. I know you mentioned when you were speaking that at first you did not know it was an autoimmune condition, but how did you learn that it was?
So I learned about it just the day of my diagnosis. And this was back in 2018. And my neurologist told me, you have multifocal motor neuropathy. But the first thing he said is, I can't tell you what you're going to be like a year from now. I can't tell you what you're going to be like 5 years from now. You might be in a wheelchair.
Oh
And
my.
then, yes.
Oh.
And then everything just started going in my head.
Yes.
Conduction block,
course.
GM1 antibodies, that went out of my head. And then he said to me, you're not going to be able to read anything about this on the internet.
Oh.
Oh.
So pretty much don't even try. So of course I tried. But the first thing that came up was ALS.
I was going to ask you about that. Yes.
Yes.
There literally was not anything about multifocal motor neuropathy. And so I immediately went to, oh my gosh, I have ALS.
Yes.
It didn't even say that there's a, MMN and it's an autoimmune disease. It wasn't until I went back upstairs to my neurologist's office and said, wait a minute, do I have ALS? And I'm showing them the phone. And he says, you have multifocal motor neuropathy. You do not have ALS. This is not fatal. This is an autoimmune disease. You're going to probably need treatment for the rest of your life. And that's when I realized, okay, it's autoimmune. There's a treatment. There's not a cure. We don't know what that treatment is actually going to do for you, which was also very scary when they're telling you, it's good luck. And again, you have to be your own advocate, like I was just to get the diagnosis. Yes. I had to keep fighting to figure out what is going to happen to me. And are there other people out there that have this? Because I suddenly was very alone with an ultra rare autoimmune disease. I bought a ticket to a lottery. I didn't want to win. That's what happened to me.
Yes, yes. So Jennifer, you've talked about some of the symptoms that it affected your feet, your toes, your ankle, cramping in your legs. What else was affected? Is one side of your body stronger or weaker than the other side? Did it affect your hands? What other symptoms did you notice?
So that's a great question because we are all different with MMN. For me, it started in my right foot with my toes and worked its way up. I'm about 5 years in, and now it started in my left foot, working its way up, and a little bit into my right hand. So your questions of, is one side weaker? Absolutely, it's the right side, and I'm right hand dominant. So that's been a difficult thing to kind of get over, to learn how to do things differently so that I can still be as independent as possible.
Explain what you mean by that. So learning to be independent. So how does that translate into your daily life?
So my life
is walking different. How about you said it's in both feet. Does it hurt you to walk?
So there's no pain associated with...
No pain, okay.
No, so this is motor nerves, not sensory nerves.
Okay.
But the pain will happen in your lower back because you'll start limping. And what
I see.
happens when your muscles atrophy is other muscles start taking over for
Right.
that. So
see.
you are going to be most likely in a little bit of pain because your body is chunk, 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 chunk when you're walking down the street. I now use a walker. I was using a cane, but also in New York City, people are hustling and bustling next to you.
Yes.
So the cane wasn't always that
Helps.
great, but people didn't quite see
Push
me.
you the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now I use a walker to help me because it also stabilizes my back. Instead of using a cane to walk, you're pushing only on your right side. Because
Can you
I am
swim?
now.
Can you do anything athletic that used to bring you such joy?
No. I haven't figured out what brings me joy yet.
Okay.
I will say being in the water, I run, I salsa dance. So that is my happy place because everything quote unquote works in the swimming pool. I can get up on my toes, I can run in place. So there's many times that I'll just put my headphones on and blast bachata music and just dance and, feel normal again. I have a new normal. I'm slower, much slower than I used to be. So walking is difficult. Stress is, I have to tell you, it's not good for me or anyone with, well, stress is not good for anyone. Just cut to the chase on that one. But
Yes.
I noticed that if I get stressed out, I'll have flare-ups. So my muscles will twitch, which is called fasciculations. And then I just have to go, okay, nothing is that important to be stressed over. Your health is more important. And then when I relax, the fasciculations go away.
That's good.
Yeah.
So meditating, does that?
So meditation is key for me.
Great.
Yes, absolutely. It gets me back into a calm, relaxed place and just, better for your energy as well.
Wow.
Just so that we understand the full impact of this, are your symptoms, do you think, typical of most people with MMN? That it affects, it sounds like, the extremities and makes one side weaker than the other. Is that what the majority of people with this very rare disease experience?
So sadly, there's no such thing as typical.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, so I actually started a Facebook support group for people with MMN.
Oh, good for you.
Beautiful. I love that. That's great.
Thank you. So it's MMN, Multifocal Motor Neuropathy Warriors. And what
I
I've
like the
done,
name.
thank you, because we're warriors. We have to get through this. But I didn't want to feel alone, and I knew there had to be other people out there.
Yes.
So I created this forum for people to ask these exact type of questions. What is typical? What isn't typical? And it's also helping people with the journey of, do I have ALS or do I have MMN?
Right.
Yes.
And I have people all around the world in this group, and I try and find them. So I look for people chatting on MMN and social media, and then I ask them to come join this group so they do not feel alone. And
So wonderful. Now, was there
you.
anything there for you, or you created this because of a void?
There wasn't anything really there for me. And so I created this because I needed this forum.
Support.
And because no matter how much your loved ones love you and want to do things for you, they don't get it because they're not living inside your body, and they see you doing things, but they don't know how to assist. And they'll say, oh, this is easy. And you're like, nothing is easy.
Right.
But you can talk to the people in your forum, and
they get it.
They get you. And if you're having a bad day, they get why you're having a bad day. And then we say, like for me, I allow myself to have a pity party. I invite myself to my party. I have, ice cream, mint chocolate chip ice cream or whatever it is. And then I have to kick myself out of the party. Because if I don't kick myself out of a party, a pity party, you're going to really feel bad about yourself, about things that you maybe can no longer do. And that's not a good place to be, because this is an emotional, mental health thing as well, because your body is changing. You have to get used to your new normal. You have to love yourself again. Because if you only think about your old life and what you can no longer do, you're going to be in a really deep, dark place.
So Jennifer, Kathy and I have been extremely interested in shining a light on rare diseases and medical challenges. We are also equally interested in hearing how people who have been diagnosed with rare diseases, how they cope. And Jennifer, you are talking about your advocacy, and it seems to me that that has helped you a lot to cope with what you're facing. And I wondered if you could talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. You started out in the beginning talking about people brushing you off, and especially as a woman, and kind of it's all in your head. And I started getting brushed off in the beginning.
Yes.
And because I was athletic, and I tell everyone, you know your body best.
Exactly right.
You know when things are not going right in your body. You need to find someone that's going to listen to you, not someone that's going to listen to your quote unquote, what's wrong with you, and then just push you out the door with a pill or something. They need to find someone that's going to listen to them, sit down and figure out what is really going on behind the scenes. Why are you tripping on your toe? Why are you really getting these spasms in your leg? It wasn't a pickle that I needed.
Mm-hmm.
I needed people to listen to me. And so in my forum of, my support group, I push, continue to find a doctor that's going to listen to you, because some people will say, well, my neurologist really doesn't think IVIG is going to help because he doesn't know much about this. Go find another one. Go find someone that's going to listen to you, because again, until you're comfortable with the answers you get, keep going. Keep fighting.
Absolutely. But
And so this advocacy has helped you cope with the issues by helping other people. By helping other people, this has really helped you feel better about yourself. Is that correct?
So I did the why me for a long time in the beginning. I cried, why me? Why me?
Right.
And then I sat down and figured out why me. It was to help other people.
That's exactly right. That's
yes.
what you're doing. And that's exactly what you're doing. And that has made you a champion. Really,
Absolutely.
someone that we greatly admire. We need people like you to help all of us to set an example. And I salute you for what you're doing.
Absolutely. But the toughest thing I wanted to add to what you were saying, that's so important about the way you're really moving people in your support group, is that with a rare disease, and particularly a very an unheard of rare disease, it's very hard to find the right doctor who's open-minded enough to look outside the box. And so not stopping is so important, that if you know your body well enough to know that some of these more traditional approaches aren't really identifying what you need, that you just keep looking and keep asking questions. And it's hard to know, as you were saying, how much do you do online versus how much do you do, with asking questions of the doctor. But sometimes with rare diseases, you end up online, and it's a very human reaction, trying to get some answers to something you'd never heard of with a surprise diagnosis. And I think it's so important to push people to keep finding the right doctor, but also to realize that sometimes answers are outside the box. And
I'm very much an outside the box thinker, because one thing is it's an autoimmune disease. And my immediate self went to, okay, it wasn't that I cut my finger on something and now I have an infection, that I did something and here's the answer. I started researching and I am determined to find the answer of why this started happening in my body. Yeah, so I'm not just going to take the answer of you have MMN, a rare autoimmune disease. I want to be the one that helps figure out what is going on, what broke down in my body. And maybe they can start narrowing things down because of my determination. And I get to help, again, other people that, might be going down my same journey. The difficult thing is no two people are alike. But I can tell you this, in my group, everyone can remember a time where their body was so stressed out. And when your body gets stressed out, it breaks down your immune system. And you can truly break down your body from stressors. My father passed away suddenly. That was a huge stressor in my life. After that, things kind of started happening. I had a rocky road right at the same time with a job at that time. All of that pushed into your body at once and you're holding it in is not good for your body, and things happen to you. So also in my forum, I want people to be able to speak freely and talk about those stressors, because we can't keep them in our body. As I said before, when I get stressed out, I can literally see the muscles under my body start to shake because my nerves are misfiring.
wow.
And therapy might be another good outlet.
So that's a great suggestion there. One thing I've told people, and I wish my neurologist did this, and I talk about this on other MMM platforms, of when you're diagnosed with something that is life-changing, they should have I'm going to call it a welcome packet, but included in there is for mental health.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Nobody ever said, you know what, I highly recommend you talk to someone, because you're going to have to learn how to do things differently. And you get in dark places because one day a shoe would fit, the next day it wouldn't fit. And I can no longer do the things I loved. I don't wakeboard, I don't snowboard, I don't go to spin class. That's very depressing. I know someone that was a rock climber and it started in his hands. These are things that you love and it's ripped away from you. And that is something where I think the first thing you need to do is the mental health. Almost maybe even more important than the actual treatment itself, because you need to get your mind in a good place
to tackle this.
To tackle what is about to happen to you.
Yeah.
You just got a diagnosis that changed your life.
Absolutely.
Jennifer, you mentioned
treatment. Love yourself. Yes.
You mentioned a treatment. I think IVF, is that what you mentioned?
IVIG.
IG. Can you tell us what that is?
Yeah, so IVIG is intravenous, and it's actually plasma donations. So,
I see.
So people donate blood, they don't donate plasma. This is actually donations from tens of thousands of people with their plasma that helps fight autoimmune diseases. My treatment is now weekly. It started out every month, and then we kind of changed it as I've grown through the years. It sometimes doesn't work as well as it when it first starts. So now I just do a weekly treatment, trying to see if I can slow the process more.
This is in a doctor's office, I'm assuming, or in a hospital setting?
Actually, I'm lucky enough that I have a nurse come to my house and do it.
I see.
Oh, that's
okay.
Have you felt a difference?
So it started, it worked immediately. And then after a few months, it stopped working. And that's where I started digging into, okay, why did it work?
And why did it stop?
Yep. And that's when I went into the journey with functional medicine, eventually removing the breast implants, because there is an underlying cause to when something works perfectly and then doesn't. So again, I know I'm fighting something inside my body. I'm working on fighting the symptoms, but again, it's not really, to me, fighting my underlying cause. So I'm going to keep digging and figure out what else is going on in my body.
You know, this is the story with all autoimmune diseases. So every autoimmune disease, for some reason, the body is confused and it starts attacking itself. And so people with arthritis, ataxia joints, you're having the same issue. The body is just misfiring and attacking your joints. And we really don't understand what is happening that is causing the body to do this. And this is with lupus, this is MN, you know, there's a long list of autoimmune diseases. And someday we're going to have the answer, Jennifer. What is causing this? We will. Yes. But in the meantime, I think you have given our listeners a really powerful story. You have taken us through symptoms and the diagnostic journey, which seemed endless and painful, and then dealing on a daily basis with your new life and how you're coping with this new life, and creating a Facebook account where you can talk to people and advise them. So now, in conclusion, Jennifer, what can you say to people who are listening, who are having a rare disease, maybe not the one that you have, but a rare disease, they find themselves alone, people who know there's something is wrong and they don't have a diagnosis? How can you help us as we close out the program? What advice could you give us?
Be your strongest advocate. Believe in yourself. Don't believe the naysayers. Don't believe the people that tell you it's only in your head. Keep fighting. You are going to find your answers. There are going to be people that are going to listen to you. You are not going to be alone. And my mantra that I say is, every day is fabulous. Some days are just more fabulous than others.
I love that.
Oh, Jennifer. Oh, I love that. Because each of us will face a challenge in our lives. And so your lesson is something that each of us can take to heart and learn from. And we wish you great luck on your journey. And I hope that you are going to find things that bring you joy, but it will be a different kind of joy.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank you for, again, having me part of this podcast. Thank you for putting a voice to people with MMN, an ultra rare autoimmune disease where we felt like no one was listening. And now you're allowing me to share my story, which is truly the story of people all around the world that might not have a voice. And I appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Thank you very much.
Peter Ulrichts obtained a PhD in immunology from the University of Ghent in Belgium. After a short postdoc period, he joined argenx in 2010 as research scientist, where he was involved in the development of various therapeutic antibodies for treatment of cancer and autoimmune diseases. In 2013, he headed the development of argenx FcRn antagonist Efgartigimod until the first in-human study, after which he transitioned to become the lead scientist of this program. Currently, he holds the position of Chief Scientific Officer and oversees the development of all clinical and preclinical compounds within the argenx pipeline. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a bit of a different time zone difference. So it's early morning here. It's afternoon over, I think you said in Belgium, right?
Yes, correct.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for making time to come on It Happened to Me. I thought we could start our conversation by really just having a bit of an overview from you in terms of what scientists have learned about autoimmune diseases, what triggers it? How does it work? I mean, where is the kind of state of what we know about autoimmune diseases right now? And, I'm thinking the answer might be we don't know a ton, but what's your insight just on like what we're at right now with autoimmune diseases?
Yeah, well, I think the true answer is indeed we've studied a lot, but we don't really know what really is triggering autoimmune diseases. What we do know is that in some cases there's an infectious trigger, a virus infection or a bacterial infection, which is preceding the autoimmune disease. What we do know is that your immune system is getting completely messed up, and then your body is reacting to your own proteins and your own cells, so to speak. But for a big majority of autoimmune diseases, we don't know what the real trigger is.
Yeah, so that's very challenging for people that are dealing with the symptoms from an autoimmune disease because, as you said, we've been doing a lot of research, but we don't necessarily have a lot of answers. And learning about autoimmune diseases, IgGs came up, and I remember, back in grad school, like learning about IgGs. Can you refresh my memory? What are IgGs? Do they have a role in immune disease? Like, how does this fit together, or maybe doesn't fit together?
Yeah, so if you read the immunology textbooks, you see that IgGs are the good guys, and they are the most important immunoglobulin in the bloodstream. They fight pathogens. They're produced by B cells, and basically they're also involved in immune protection of the fetus, because it's the only immunoglobulin which is passing the placenta to protect the newborn. But in some cases, these IgGs are also the foe, so to speak. They are attacking parts of your own body, and in more than 100 autoimmune diseases, it's known that IgGs are contributing to the signs and symptoms of that disease.
So it's really looking at what are the molecules that are being activated to fight something that the body thinks is foreign, but really it's your own body. So that's where the autoimmune comes in. So this episode, we've been focusing on multifocal motor neuropathy, or MMN. So is this considered an autoimmune disease? Can you give us a little bit of background on what this is categorized as?
It is definitely a serious, debilitating autoimmune disease. In contrast to what we have been discussing before, it's not driven by IgG autoantibodies, but it is driven by IgM autoantibodies. Principle is the same. These IgM autoantibodies are attacking structures on the nerve, and as such, these patients are experiencing a lot of weakness just because you inhibit neuronal transfer or signal transfer.
Yeah, and we've heard from a patient advocate earlier in the episode just on her experience with this and just how debilitating and painful that it can be. So you mentioned IgM as opposed to IgG, so different immunoglobulin. So did the learnings about the role of IgM specifically in MMN lead to develop potentially new therapies being studied in MMN, other autoimmune diseases, or have you used other things to develop these new therapies?
Yeah, correct. At argenx, we are developing innovative treatments for patients with or for orphan diseases where there is still a big unmet needs, and basically we have two molecules in development, one targeting these IgMs and another one targeting these IgGs. Specifically to MMN, what we know is that these IgM molecules are attacking the neurons. We know from animal experiments that is, if you give these autoantibodies to these animals, they become or they develop symptoms which are very similar to MMN. And what we also know is that these IgM molecules are very good at attracting complement molecules, and complement is part of also our host defense, but basically these complement molecules are now attacking the neuron instead of typically bacteria. So we have been developing a molecule, argenx 117, which is inhibiting one specific complement factor, C2. And as such, we think we can bring innovation to these underserved MMN patients.
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing.
And next to that, we have a molecule which is now approved in an IgG-mediated autoimmune disease called generalized myasthenia gravis. that molecule is inhibiting a crucial salvage receptor for IgGs, basically a receptor which is keeping these IgGs in circulation. And by blocking that receptor, you quickly deplete these IgGs, including the disease-causing IgG autoantibodies. That mechanism holds promise in more than 100 autoimmune diseases, because there are more than 100 autoimmune diseases described which are triggered by these IgG autoantibodies. Currently, we're studying 13 different IgG-mediated autoimmune diseases with that molecule, and our intention is to go even to 15.
Wow, that's incredible, and a great thing about also just basic research that, learning so much about IgGs, IgMs, and their role in autoimmune conditions and diseases, that then it allows for, okay, we can develop something that can really help more than one disorder, or it can help a disorder that's very common as well as a rare disease or orphan disorder. So I think that highlights a great part. And I wanted to learn a little bit more about argenx trial. I think it's called ARDA, and that's the one for MMN. Am I getting that right? What is correct. What is the phase of the clinical trial? What's the purpose of the study? Can you dive in a little bit more in terms of just giving us information about that clinical trial?
Correct. And clinical trials or stages of clinical trials typically come in three ways. First, you do a healthy volunteer study to demonstrate that your molecule is safe and has some pharmacodynamic effect. So is, in our case, 4117 is inhibiting complement. And now with the ARDA trial, we're in phase 2, where we are indeed treating MMN patients. And the objective of that trial is to understand whether the molecule is safe in patients, but also if there is a sign of efficacy of this mode of action. So basically, it's a proof of concept where we try to validate our hypothesis, and in the meantime also find the optimal dose and dosing regimens to then go into the third phase, which is a registrational phase, a pivotal phase, a larger study where we really want to demonstrate that our molecule is giving benefit over control and is of course safe.
Yes, yeah, always the goal of clinical trials to make sure that it's helping with symptoms and also that it's safe. Definitely have to have both of those. So where can people learn more about the study and get access to it? Just where to lead people in terms of just learning a little bit more about this?
I think the best resource is the internet, obviously. I think I personally would go and look into clinicaltrials.gov and find the ARDA study, and there you can also see the participating centers.
Definitely. And NoRare also has a link, norare.com/en-mmn for also that information. I'm sure there's a hyperlink there, but we'll include all those links in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming on and just sharing about, basic overview of autoimmune conditions. We talked about IgGs, IgM's role in MMN, and just the development of everything that argenx is working on with these clinical trials. It's very exciting to see these developments happening. So thank you so much for being a part of this.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you for listening to this episode of It Happened to Me. We encourage you to learn more at ithappenedtomepod.com. That's ithappenedtomepod.com. Please use the contact form on our website to submit your guest suggestions, comments, questions, ideas, and feedback for the show. You can also email us directly at ithappenedtomepod@gmail.com. Again, that's ithappenedtomepod@gmail.com. We would also really appreciate it if you can leave us a 5-star rating and review on your podcast app, probably Apple or Spotify. This helps others in the rare disease and medical challenges community find us. It Happened to Me is created and hosted by Kathy Gillenhorn and Beth Glassman. Steve Holzenbach is our media engineer and co-producer. Myself, Keir Deneen from DNA Today, is our marketing lead and co-producer. Ashlyn Anokian is our graphic designer. And remember, it happened to me. I'm not alone, and neither are you.